Welcome to Let's Thrive Postpartum, where we tackle postpartum depression and anxiety head on, guiding you back to yourself. Join Kelly Siebold, founder of Thrive Postpartum, and Ashley Moore, a maternal mental health therapist. Through honesty and laughter, we share expert advice and real stories. While not therapy or medical advice, you'll find education, support, and hope. Welcome to the village. Let's thrive postpartum.
Hi, and welcome back to Let's Thrive Postpartum. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Ashley. Today, we are going to be hearing from Lauren. She is on Instagram as the Connected OT. She's an occupational therapist and a mom of two. She lives in South Carolina with her husband and two kiddos who are ages 6 and 7. Her passion as an occupational therapist is helping parents find simple ways to help their children regulate through sensory input, movement, and of course, connection. She has a wonderful online presence where she gives out tips to parents. And I think this is really going to be a wonderful conversation, not just about kids, but how it's helpful for moms too.
And I think that's it. So you're going to hear such great things coming from Lauren right now. She does make that really good connection of how do you sensory regulate children? And if you're a mom suffering with postpartum depression, which we all are or have, how do you help regulate your child? How do you help regulate yourself emotionally so that you're also, there for your child more? And so she's got some great tips on sensory regulation, things that you can do at home right now that don't take any extra time. How to talk about children who are in that fight or flight panic mode, how you can go about calming them before you start talking about regulation. Also, she has a great guide that we're going to put in the show notes. It's called 5-minute regulation routines that you can do with your child as a parent. And she really just wants you to know how to focus on movement within your already day activities and how, if you are struggling, that is also so beneficial for you and for all of us. With that, let's turn it over to Lauren.
Hey, Lauren, thank you so much for joining Kelly and I today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk with y'all.
We are so excited to hear everything that you're about to tell us.
Yeah. So, Lauren, to get us started, can you just tell everyone what you do as an OT, how you got interested into this field, and just a little more about what this job entails? It's something I wasn't super familiar with really until I had friends like you start getting into this field and realize that it is something that's actually really interconnected with mental health as well.
Yeah, so I became an OT because my sister, Carly, has a traumatic brain injury. And when she really from about the time she was 2 or 3 until close to her teen years, she was in speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy to address her physical and cognitive disabilities. And occupational therapy just made this huge impact for my mom as a parent and her and our family. She had a lot of sensory processing issues that went along with her brain injury. Like, for instance, she could not tolerate having her hair combed, her teeth brushed, her face washed, just these basic things that have to be done every day. And it made my mom's mornings were so hectic. And, Carly would be screaming. My mom would be in tears. It was just this scene. And so that was her OT got her to the point where she could tolerate all of those things. And it ran so much more smoothly. And it was just a big impact for our family. And I also would go to her therapy sessions with her, and they had this big gym and there was a swing and there was all these fun things to play on. So I just thought that was so cool as a kid. So I became interested originally from that. And it was always kind of in the back of my mind that I wanted to go that direction. So But yeah, so I went to undergrad, for health promotion, and then decided that I wanted to continue and pursue occupational therapy. So I got my master's in occupational therapy. And throughout school, I was interested in a lot of different aspects, but sensory integration is really always what kind of called me. So I've worked in several different areas of OT, but sensory integration is my passion and what I want to share with parents. And so I'm 10 years into my OT career. And like I said, I've worked with both adults and kids, actually, most recently, more so adults, so that I could be with my own children more. But I've found this avenue on Instagram to share sensory processing information and regulation tips with parents. And because I really think it can not only help children with disabilities, with autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, but for all kids, a lot of the concepts can be beneficial and also beneficial for adults and moms. So yeah,
Lauren, let me ask you a quick question. So if a mom is listening and doesn't know, what is the high level definition of what is sensory regulation? What does that mean for us?
So this is how I like to explain sensory processing to parents. So everyone has this sensory cup. I like to call it the sensory cup. And our sensory cup is how we process information from the external environment, like visual, auditory, proprioceptive, which is like input through our joints and muscles from when we move around, vestibular input, how our body moves through space, tactile input, like all the things we're touching all day. So all of this fills our sensory cup throughout the day. And some people have a really big sensory cup, and it takes more of this to fill their sensory cup. And some people have a little tiny sensory cup and can become easily overwhelmed if it gets too full, right? So we are most regulated when our cup is at the optimal level, not too full, not too empty. So this concept of sensory regulation is working on getting that cup just right. It's not going to be perfect every day, but we can do things to really tune in to what we need as moms and adults and what our child needs and try to get it as close as we can to that optimal level.
Yeah. And I think something I've noticed in working with clients, I work with kids and also with a lot of moms, is that this isn't something people are always aware of that is a kind of underlying cause for some of their anxiety or for some of their overwhelm. Kelly, you and I have talked about like mom rage and everything. You hear moms talk about feeling like they're touched out. They've had kids grabbing at them all day. I have a lot of moms who are overstimulated by noises and sound. So they'll use like their noise canceling headphones or some of those ear loops that dampen like some of the decibels coming in. And so a lot of this is, I think therapists deal with, like mental health therapists deal with a lot when we're trying to dig in and figure out like where are your triggers when to trigger your anxiety or to trigger some of that mom rage that we've talked about and that kind of thing. And it's always fascinating, and now it makes me feel like I need to go back and just restudy a lot of stuff in the OT world too, because this is for moms something that I hear all the time, especially if you're having your second or third baby and you have other kids at home who may or may not have their own sensory processing concerns, is how do you recognize this in yourself as a parent and then take steps to address things that can help it, right? Like there's all these different tools that, Lauren, I can't, like for you, we're going to ask you this to share in a minute, but like different tools that you can use to regulate your own nervous system, to regulate your kids' nervous system so that the whole family is working better together. Like the family machine, as I say, is like operating smoothly when everyone is regulated, but it takes a lot of work.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I've thought a lot about this. I think, as adults, we get better at like our sensory needs and preferences never really go away. We just get a lot better at compensating for them and figuring out the things we need to do to self-regulate. Hopefully it's in a healthy way. Sometimes it's in an unhealthy way, right? But then as moms, when we have kids, so much of that is often taken away. Like I mean, we don't have the time. We don't have the luxury of getting 2 hours of quiet time in the morning or getting that hour-long workout in. Like all of that is stripped away. So we have to kind of shift and come up with new like compensatory techniques and things like that. And how can we, like you said, how can we marry that with the whole family to get what we need and to give them what they need? And so that's why a lot of the things that I post on my Instagram account, they involve movement with the parent and the child. And that's the reason I do that is because I'm a mom. I know like you can't, time is very valuable and you don't always have that. You can't obviously you can't leave your child always to go work out or whatever. So it's just including them and doing the things together. So
which makes so much sense. And if you're listening, we have a link in the show notes to Lauren's Instagram. Click on that, go over and check out some of her latest videos. And Lauren, talking about how you're showing parents with children and you with your children, can you tell us a little bit about how regulating the nervous system is really important for kids? Why does that matter?
Yeah. So as you guys know, kids are not developmentally capable of regulating their own nervous system yet, right?
Really?
Like regulate.
They're not.
I feel like parents, often expect this from our kids and it's just not, it's just not there. Like it's not going to be there. And so it's a skill that we can help support and help teach them just like any other skill. So co-regulation is so important in that stage. And I think just recognizing also, when I give these tips, people are like, well, that doesn't work for my kid. That didn't work for my kid, and it's never going to be this one size fits all. It's all kind of a trial and error of what works for your child specifically. But a few of the things that I recommend are removing your child from the situation to a lower stim environment. So a quieter environment, going outside if you can. Also, just deep pressure. So some kids are receptive to like a big hug and slow rocking. If they don't want to be touched, you could try like placing them in a bean bag and you get that same full body deep pressure and just slow linear rocking. And then also teaching them deep breathing. And that can be kind of a hard concept for kids to learn. But a few of the ways that I like to teach it are rainbow breaths. So, you breathe in and hold it, and then you breathe out for 3, like making a big rainbow. And you're going to model this and then have your child do it. Other fun ways, especially for younger kids, are like pinwheels, party blowers, bubbles. So you can kind of keep those things on hand and see if it works for your child. Like I said, it's a lot of trial and error.
And it's trial and error for the parent too, because as you're doing this with your kids, and I tell parents this all the time, like, again, if you do it together as a family, if a lot of times when kids are dysregulated, the parents are dysregulated as well. And maybe it's, it may not be because of any specific diagnosis or anything like that. But when a parent is dysregulated, your child is likely going to be dysregulated because they pick up and mirror everything that we're also putting out into the world. And so I'm even sitting here thinking everything you just said. I'm sitting here thinking about a mom with a newborn, right? Rocking, swaddling. If you're in a loud environment, going into a quiet room with a sound machine, like these are all things that are so calming for kids, for babies, for parents. And so trying to recognize, like, if you're a new mom feeling really overwhelmed, or are you overwhelmed in part because maybe you do have a baby who's colicky or who's crying and all these things, trying some of these different things out to see what helps calm your baby is probably going to help calm you. What helps calm you is probably going to help calm your baby.
Yes, it really is. I mean, even when we shush an infant, like shh, and we're bouncing and we're rocking like that, shh, like you can't shh and breathe fast. It slows your breathing, all of that. So all of these concepts really that we use for infants can work for older kids and ourselves.
Because I'm learning so much that I need to try. This is great.
Yeah. The big thing is when we're talking about the nervous system is when our kids are in that state where they're just melting down and they're red faced and crying and screaming and they're in that fight or flight phase, like whether it's rational or not, whether we perceive it as a rational reason, which many times we don't, their body doesn't know the difference, right? To their body, if this is an emergency, they are like in this, they're just too far gone for you to sit and rationalize. And you're not going to teach any great lessons in that moment. So how can we calm their nervous system? And then you can talk about the issues at hand, and your feedback is going to be they're going to be a lot more receptive and process it to have the carryover next time versus they don't hear anything. They're not hearing what you say in that moment. So I think using those techniques, how can we get them out of that fight or flight phase back to a more calm, regulated state so that then you can talk about whatever the issue was.
Yeah. No, it's so important. I mean, moms, like, I'll tell parents when parents are coming in, and sometimes there's a little bit of conflict going on with like mom and dad and Kelly. Like, we've talked about relationships and with newborns and everything, how complicated that can be. And I'll try and compare, especially if they have other kids, and say, look, like, if you guys have just kind of had an argument, or somebody is feeling, let's say somebody does have generalized anxiety disorder, they're having panic attacks and that kind of thing as an adult. When you're in that state, if your spouse walks up to you and is like, just calm down, this isn't a big deal, just relax, you're going to punch them in the face. That would be your response. Like, you're not going to say, okay, that's a great idea, I'll just calm down, you know? And I think that as adults, we do forget that kids, like, we don't have that ability. Kids most certainly don't have that ability. And trying to figure out, again, like, recognizing what state you're in. Okay, I'm really dysregulated right now. My kid is really dysregulated right now. What do we need to do? What kind of tools do we need to bring in to regulate ourselves? Then you can get into talking about, right, the issue, like, what was going on. Oh, I got your blue shoes instead of your red shoes. I'm so sorry. That probably felt really frustrating because that just wasn't what you wanted, right? Like, you can go through all of that later with adults and with kids, but not when everybody is in this like fight or flight state. It just isn't heard. Like, your brain's not going to pick up on it.
And really modeling that self-regulation is probably one of the most powerful thing that we can do to teach self-regulation, right? So if I am triggered and I need to respond to a situation, like, I'll give you for instance, like, my little girl, I've told her, she is not to get nail polish out, right? My kitchen counter has nail polish on it currently. Like, I've told her not to get nail polish out, and I put it in the top of my linen closet in the bathroom. So, but somehow she goes and she finds this nail polish, and I catch her at our kitchen table, nail polish undone, about to drip it everywhere. And so in that moment, I just like wanted to lose it on her. And so I was like, I looked at her and I was just like, she's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you? And so then that's when you tell them, like, I'm trying to calm my body. That's what I'm trying to calm my body. I'm taking these deep breaths, and then we're going to talk. And or you can even say, I'm going to walk away for a minute, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to walk away and take some deep breaths, and then I'm going to come back. And just something as simple as that, you're teaching your child, you're modeling that self-regulation.
Lauren, let me ask this. You mentioned earlier that the self-regulation is a skill to start teaching our children. Since you've worked with kids of all ages and adults, is there an age where you see self-regulation becomes easier? Is that like when we're 5 or when we're 25? Because I feel like I'm probably not the best at it. But is there an age where you can tell a difference that just naturally children are able to kind of self-regulate easier? I'm asking because I have a 2.5-year-old and we have no self-regulation whatsoever.
Well, I think really, I would say like preteen, teen years, you start to see it come around some. But by definition, like, isn't it, you guys, the prefrontal cortex, like, it's not fully mature till early 20s?
Yeah, I think now sometimes, especially in men, they're saying like late 20s.
Yeah. So,
And yeah,
and the prefrontal cortex plays a huge part in emotional regulation. So if you want to go by that, not till your
We have a
20s,
while.
till
Yeah.
your 20s. But no, but I do see improvement. I think we get better at it as teens.
That's really helpful just to hear from a mom's perspective that, oh, we've been working on this at 2, by 4, she's not supposed to have it down pat. But that takes the anxiety of the stress that why is she not catching it? It's good to know that this is a continual, lifelong 20-year process versus she's just going to learn this one day.
Well, and one thing I like to recommend to parents too is to try to keep like a behavior log in your phone. If your child is having these really intense meltdowns, like, think about what's happened that day, what preceded that meltdown. How was their sleep the night before? Have they had a lot of screen time that day? Have they had much opportunity to move that day? Has there been a recent change in their routine? Like, my kids just started school, something like that. I think just being aware of all of that and realizing that that can affect their emotional regulation makes you a lot more patient and understanding of some of the reactions. And also, if there are some sensory processing issues there, if you take notes, like, where did the behavior occur? What, is it always in a public place where it's loud and there's a lot of people? And does it always happen there? Or is it like anywhere that there's bright fluorescent lighting? I had one kid one time that was he had a lot of visual processing issues, and that was really we figured out that was really triggering for him. And so then it's just kind of making modifications based on that. But I think kind of keeping track of those behaviors and everything that went along with them can help you pick out what might have triggered it and prevent it in the future, or make adaptations to help it.
yeah. Well, and I love like I've got all these thoughts like spinning in my head right now. I really love this conversation because I do talk with families all the time about the interconnectedness between everyone's nervous systems in a family, right? Like when parents especially are also really sensitive to some of these sensory things, they have sometimes these big reactions as well. Like we call them big feelings in kids, but parents have really big feelings in reaction to their kids' behavior. So I hear all the time, like, my kid can't do this. We have to work on, they have to learn how to calm down. They have to learn. And I'll always talk with the parents and say, well, how do you calm down? What do you do? And almost every time there's a little bit of a deficit there, right? Like they don't do a great job of regulating themselves. And then I gently have to point out, like, there's no way that your kid is going to magically learn or pick up a skill that they don't see or they don't hear in their environment, right? Like if they don't see you doing it or hear you doing it, it doesn't just come like magically into their brain, right? They'll learn some things at school, but their environment at home where they live and spend the most of their time also has to be supportive of everyone kind of figuring out where are they on this regulation spectrum and like how to get pulled back into like neutral so that everybody's working and getting along. Because that's like when you feel more connected, right? And that's your whole Instagram thing. I love it. But like when everyone is feeling more connected, kids' behavior naturally is improved almost every time.
Definitely. And that's one of the things that I have tried to communicate, and I probably need to emphasize it more. Like before anything else, I think you need to spend 15 minutes of one-on-one time with your child every day. Like just 15 minutes. But during that 15 minutes, like you aren't looking at your phone, you are playing with them, doing something they want to do. It is child-led. You are just a participant. I love if it can be involve movement. Like maybe you are like my son, he loves to scooter race. So that's kind of our thing as we will go outside, and we have two of those razor balance scooters, and it's actually like kind of fun. So we will scooter race up and down the driveway, or he loves to jump on the trampoline. So we'll jump on the trampoline, and then it's a workout for me too. So just doing, so I think if you can get that 15 minutes in, and you can incorporate some regulating proprioceptive input, which is like working against resistance, and vestibular input, which is inverting the head or controlled spinning, things like that, a balance board, scooters, a bike, whatever, that can be a really powerful first step to regulation. Because especially with moms in that postpartum phase, I think you have to keep it simple, right? Like we're not adding to the to-do list at this point in our lives. We need a streamlined, like very simple thing to do. So that would be like the one thing I would say. And then you're regulating that, you're regulating yourself as well if you're moving at the same time, and like bonus points if you can get outside. So, and also to go on what you said, I'll use myself as an example. I know that I am a sensory seeker. Like I was the kid that would chew my pencils, like chew the eraser off, bite my nails. I was always like fidgeting. So, and that hasn't really changed for me. You have to figure out ways to incorporate that as an adult and as a mom. So one thing that I will do is every morning I have a smoothie, and I drink it through a straw. And sometimes I'll just drink my drink through a crazy straw, but you're getting oral motor proprioceptive input from that, like the same things you get from biting your nails. Like that's why we bite our nails, or, chewing gum. You can chew gum, crushed ice, things like that throughout the day. For kids, I'll recommend like chew necklaces for that, but it's not as acceptable as a mom. But then also,
you could, I suppose.
They do have adult. You should make one. Chew necklaces. Yeah. Yeah. And then also I've just realized how important moving in the morning is for me and the way I react to my kids throughout the day. So, and I used to work out so that for the vanity of it, right? But now I work out so that I can be nicer and more responsive and demonstrate regulation with my kids. So, and it doesn't have to be, I think in that postpartum phase, like that can sound very overwhelming, the whole working out, all that. And it can just be a walk with your baby in the stroller for 15 minutes to regulate. It doesn't have to be this aggressive, long workout.
I loved like bouncing on a yoga ball, like holding my son. I remember when he was a newborn and sitting and like bouncing, and you're like keeping your balance and getting a little bit of movement in, but it's very gentle. It's very repetitive, very calming for him. That was the only way he would sleep sometimes at 3:00 in the morning in my closet. So,
yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. Lauren, is there anything else like you would like listeners to know about you, about occupational therapy in general? Anything we haven't asked that you would like to share?
Well, I was going to address bedtime and sleep, because I know that can be my older child, he didn't sleep till he was 3 years old. Like consistently. So I think we suspect that he has ADHD and some sensory issues there. And those kids can also struggle with arousal levels, right? And establishing sleep rhythm. So looking back on it, I think that I blamed myself. I thought that I was doing something wrong, and that's why he wasn't sleeping. And there are just so many reasons why kids don't sleep. And it's usually not something that we're doing as moms.
Can you say that out loud one more time? Because I feel like the shame that comes to moms when your child doesn't sleep as well as your friends or your sisters. Just say that one more time so everybody hears it again.
Yeah. So there are so many reasons that kids don't sleep. Sensory processing issues can be one of them. And most of the time it is not something we were doing as moms. And when I had my son, it was during the whole moms on call like craze, which I do think that there are some benefits to the moms on call protocol. I'm not like,
One routines and that kind of thing is very like that can be very helpful very helpful. But sometimes holding the schedule to like a T and feeling like your whole life revolves around it can be really challenging.
yes. And I was kind of comparing myself to my friends who had babies and had done moms on call. And they're like, oh, this just worked great for my baby. And I'm like, well, my baby's still waking up 3 or 4 times a night. But yeah, I regress back to the things we can do to help with bedtime. And I think the most important thing is like 2 hours before bed. If you can get your child, if you can get outside, that's even better. But just get outside, get that movement in, get that heavy work in, which is anything working is against resistance. If you look at my Instagram page, I have a ton of ideas for that. But get that in 2 hours before bedtime. And then when you do come in for bedtime, start calming things down, right? You can dim the lights, lower your voice. If you can get them in the bath, that's great because they're getting that warmth and the deep pressure from the bath. And then I'll also have some idea. You can do a burrito roll. It's one of the ideas.
I love that.
Where you roll your child in a blanket like a burrito and they get that full body deep pressure to help calm them down and like read them a book. They're in the burrito. But yeah, just getting plenty of movement throughout the day. And I would say, I know it's you and Ashley and I did a post on this on screen time. And I know it's not possible to completely eliminate screen time, but if you can limit tablet use before bed, I would say makes a huge impact. If they're going to watch TV, let it be on a family TV, not a tablet in their face. So
yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, there's lots of moms out there who are experiencing postpartum depression, anxiety, and other concerns after, with their second, third, fourth child. And a lot of that, though, is part of what contributes to that is the fact that you are so overstimulated and overwhelmed during the day because you have a newborn and other kids. And so I think taking some of these tips and ideas on if your other kids, I do this with my own kids, if your other kids are having a hard time regulating, that is going to contribute to your own stress and anxiety and worry with the newborn because you just are trying to figure out multiple children. And so I think I love this, like all these different ways that the family can regulate, that you can help your other kids regulate. And practicing this too, your baby's going to pick up on it. And I mean, my son's favorite thing to tell me now, if he sees me getting worked up, is he points his finger at me and says, "You need to take a deep breath, mommy. You have to take a deep breath." Neither of us are always great at it in the moment, but he knows. So.
That's the most important thing. Yeah. Yeah. And babies find it so entertaining to, like, I guess if I could give one thing you should do, it's figure out a way to move with your child. Like if you have multiple children and a baby, figure out a way that you can move with your child and incorporate that regulation that benefits the both of you, whether you're doing a wall push-up contest or you're doing animal walks down the hall, like animal races, or maybe you just turn on like a Cosmic Kids yoga on the TV and you do that together and you put the baby in a bouncer and babies love to watch us do those sort of things, right? Like they think, they laugh, and especially if it's an older sibling, like they think it's entertaining. We're moving in front of them and we're talking. And it's also great for their development to see that kind of thing. So that would be my one piece of advice, is just take 15 minutes and figure out a way to move with and connect with your kid.
That is great advice. And as you mentioned, moms are so busy, but 15 minutes, you're already doing that. How to just bring the movement and the regulation in. Lauren, this has been so informative, so helpful for all the different tips that moms can be doing on their own. I have a laundry list of things that I should start doing with our child. And just knowing that it's a skill that you're going to continue to build self-regulation, not only for your child, but for yourself. If you're struggling right now, kind of really building what you're doing together to help your family and your kid. This is so helpful. And we appreciate you being on so much this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. This has been a fun chat.
Thanks.
Kelly, that was such a wonderful conversation I think we had. I love just listening to different ways that families can be connected. If you're a mom struggling with postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, one of the things as a therapist I do work on is learning these different regulation skills, what works for you as an adult. And often what works for adults also works for kids. What works for kids often works for adults. And the closer that families feel together, I think it helps everyone emotionally, no matter what. So I think this was really a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Agree. And regardless of if your child is a newborn or if your child is 3 or 4, she went over some really great things you can do, even from how, like you mentioned, Ashley, bouncing on a yoga ball, shushing your baby when they're in that very infant stage, to burrito wraps and scooter races. And all of it sounds fun, but the impact it has on their regulation, their emotions, on your connection, on your regulation, just such helpful things that we can all do. So we hope that you took out some pointers today. As Lauren mentioned, one size does not fit for everybody, but it's things to try and pay attention to.
And don't forget, you can find her on Instagram at theconnected_OT. She also has a free guide that we're linking in the show notes, the 5-minute regulation tips. So make sure you check that out. Give her a follow.
Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please be sure to hit subscribe, leave us your feedback, and give us a 5-star review. For even more support, visit us at wethrivepostpartum.com/podcast to sign up for our newsletter and learn more about our community. Remember, you are not alone. With support, you can feel better. Together, let's thrive postpartum.